Hello, today we're going to look at pruning roses. We're going to look at why we prune roses, the time of year we're pruning roses, what it achieves by pruning a rose, and how to make your rose look the best for the coming season when you want to encourage flower in it and just make your garden look particularly good. So welcome to the Hilliers YouTube channel, and here we go. Okay, the equipment you'll need to prune your roses, of course, most importantly is secateurs. We've got a nice pair of secateurs here. Pruning saw, so you may have seen one of these before. This is for tree pruning generally, but you can use it for your roses and large shrubs as well, one of those. And if you've got anything that's got a really large caliper, so a really sort of wide stem, you might need something a bit more powerful. So we also have here some good old loppers. You've got to make sure, of course, all these things are nice and sharp. You can buy sharpening stones to sharpen your secateurs and your loppers. The saw's a bit more difficult. You usually have to buy them brand new with a nice sharp edge on them. And of course, do be careful because all this equipment is sharp. The other thing too is to make sure that they're sterilized. They've got to be nice and clean before you make any cuts. Otherwise, you're just going to encourage germs into the cuts and open wounds, and bacteria can get in there and cause all sorts of problems. So just make sure that all your equipment is ready to go and sterilized. And of course, the most important thing if you're doing roses or anything that's got sharp edges is a nice pair of leather gloves. Okay, one of the big questions with pruning, and specifically pruning roses, is what time of year should I be pruning them? That's a very good question. Traditionally, we start pruning our roses in February, just before the ground starts to warm up and you're going into spring. However, the season for pruning roses is actually realistically a lot longer than that. You don't obviously want to be hitting the season when the roses are starting to form their buds ready to flower, but you can work your way up to there. So even into the beginning of spring, March, April time, you can still be pruning. But if you keep to a certain time of year, every year I prune my roses at this time, then you won't forget. So that's kind of what we do. So traditionally, we are pruning our roses in February. Okay, so let's start our prune. We're looking at a pretty congested shrub here. In fact, it's a few shrubs sort of all growing into each other. And a lot of you might have roses like this. And the question is, where do I start with this? Well, the most important thing is you've got to clear out a point of view so you can see what you're doing. So you need to take away all the crossing branches and the things that are tangled over each other. There's also, of course, you've got to look for dead. This is not a lot of dead on this shrub here, actually, but one of the main things to start with is looking for dead materials. So anything that's brown and brittle, you can prune that out straight away. However, we need to get rid of a bit of this congestion so we can actually work on some selective pruning. Now, I've got my gloves on here, but actually this is going to be a bit restricted because using secateurs with gloves is difficult. So I tend to just use the one glove to be grabbing the bits that have got the thorns on and taking them out of the way. So we're going to take away a lot of congestion first. Now, this is a bit scary for people because they think, roses, delicate, but actually you have to be a bit harsh to do them some good. So I'm going to start just pruning away some of the really crossing, snarly bits to make it a bit more clear in there so I can see what I'm doing. So it means clearing out all this stuff here. And at this stage, it doesn't really matter how you're doing your pruning cut. You don't have to look for buds or anything like this because you're just clearing away some of the things that are crossing over and stopping your view to actually the main structure of the plant. So we're just taking that all out the way. You can see I'm being quite harsh here. And you can do this with floribundas and tea roses that have got out of control. Even shrub roses, you can treat them the same. With climbers, it's a little bit different, but you can still clear out some of the debris before you start working on the main structure. You can see there's a nice piece of dead wood, which I can take out straight away and try and go right to the base of the dead wood and prune that out. Also, of course, I would wear something on your arms because obviously a lot of people will end up scratching their arms if you've got open sleeves or anything like that. So we've cleared away some of the crossing branches and the overhanging branches here, and there's a little bit of a mess still, but we can start to see the main structure of the plant. And when I'm talking about main structure, I'm talking about selecting some of the stems that you're going to keep and the others that you're going to get rid of. So the ones that we want to get rid of is anything that's dead. So we've got a piece of dead material there that you can see. It's brown or black. Any crossing branches, and anything that is going to have congestion in the middle. So what we want to do with our rows is we want to clear out some of the crossing branches in the middle, so it just aerates the plant a bit. You want to get a nice lot of air passing through there, and that will cut down on any pests and diseases, especially things like mildew, which is a massive problem on roses. Also helps a little bit with keeping black spot at bay. So make it nice and airy within the plant. And what I want to be left with is a structure of stems, probably about 4 or 5, depends on the size of your rose bush. If you've had a bad year and your rose has just gone straight up and you've only got like 1 stem on it, this is a time you can prune it right back too, but not hard. You still want to be above the ground. So your rose is going to stand about a foot, 1.5 foot off the ground, and eventually it's just going to be a few stems, and it's going to be a bit scary because you're going to think I've ravaged my rose and really done it in, but actually you've done it some good. This will put energy back into the plant, it will put on new growth, and it will also form a nicer shape. So if your rose has really got out of control and it's really messy, this is the time that you can start to sort it out. Okay, so you can see lots of wispy stems here, which are no good. They're really just going to produce leaf, not flower next year. So you want to take those off. So I'm going to be quite harsh with this plant, and I'm taking it back to these main structural stems that you can see here. So anything that is overhanging, I'm going to take off. You want to make some nice clean cuts, but if you can't quite get in because there's thorns and crossing branches, you can always tidy those cuts up a bit later. Now this rose I want next year to not just hang over the path, but grow upright and then weep over. So I'm going to take a lot of these weeping over ones out. However, there's some nice, quite strong stems here, so I might not take them right back. You can, of course, select at the end of the day. You don't have to, at the beginning of your prune, decide which ones you're going to leave. You can see what looks better a little later on, but certainly none of these young branches, you don't want to keep those, so you take some of those out. And although hips are nice, and that one's actually coming from another plant anyway, although the hips are nice through the winter time, unless they're really, really decorative, I won't worry about pruning those out. And of course they are seed forming, so they're draining energy from the plant anyway, so not masses, but a little bit, so it'll help to prune those off too anyway. So there's a piece of dead there coming out of the ground. Now I don't know why that's died, because that was a new stem, but it didn't make it, so we're taking that out. Of course, before you start pruning your rose, make sure it's healthy anyway. No point in pruning a dying rose, but there's lots of healthy growth on this one here. So what you're looking for now you've got it to this stage, is to prune to an outside bud. And the reason we do that is so that the buds grow out and they make a nice bushy outward growing plant where the flowers are on the outside and there's no inward crossing branches to cause problems. So this is an inward facing bud, you can probably see, so that will grow into the shrub, so you don't want that. They're very tiny and sometimes very difficult to see on a rose, especially we've got all the thorns along the branch, but generally they're at intervals along, so it's about 2 inches interval to the next bud, which is there, and the next one is a bit closer, but these are all on the inside. So I want to be looking for an outside facing bud. So there's actually one there, which we could prune out to. This one is sort of facing that way, but that would do as well. But I'm trying to take this quite far back, so I'll be pruning to around about a foot off the ground. Well, that would do there. Now there is this sort of talk that you should really prune at an angle so that water runs off, but actually it's a bit of an old wives' tale that makes any difference whatsoever. So I just do a flat cut generally straight across. So this looks a bit harsh, but this is about the height you want all the way around the rose. You can do it precise if you want to, but because buds are at different heights, you generally won't be exact, but as long as it's not far off that sort of height. So go here. And you are looking for those tiny little buds, but you know, if you can't find them, you'll just have to prune back when it starts to grow. And you see the bud of course pushing through and growing, you can then prune back to it, but could be problems with that, so try and find the bud if you can. You see on this bit here it's still a bit congested, but I'm going to take quite a lot of that back, so I'm actually going to take quite a big chunk of this here right back and take that off. And you need a good pair of secateurs for this because it's quite a strong branch to take off there. You can see there's still a bit of dead on this plant here. Take that back. Any sort of like old stems that have died, you can see there. Take that back. And that's kind of what you want to do over the whole of this bush here. And like I said, there's a few here, so they're all intertwining. But eventually you want to end up with a set of stems no taller than that, really. And it's a bit scary because this was a plant that was like, you know, almost 5, even taller, and almost 6 foot when it's in full flower. So pruning it hard like this is a bit scary, but it's definitely beneficial to the plant to do this. You'll get better flowering, a tidier plant, and a healthier plant. And once you've done all your prune, it could be a good idea also to mulch around the plant. So you want to put a good, well-rotted manure around, not too thick and not right close to the base, but around the plant itself. And then in the spring, you could dig a little bit of blood, fish and bone into the ground and give your roses just that extra boost to give you good flower for the rest of the season. So that's basically how to prune your rose. And like I say, it does look a bit harsh, but it'll really benefit the plant in the long run. So I hope you enjoyed that. But if you do want to know more about pruning roses or any other types of pruning or how to look after plants in general, we're here at the Hillier Gardens, ready to answer any of your questions. Do come along and see us. Do subscribe to our channel and press that like button.